Imagine this, a cold October night, a storm raging outside, the wind howling, the rain battering against the windows. And then these words, "Get out of my house. I don't need a sick daughter." Those were the last words my father ever said to me before he shoved me out the door and locked it behind me. I was 15. I didn't have a jacket, a phone, or any money. Just a school backpack, with a few algebra homework papers inside, and sneakers that were already soaking through as the rain began to fall. I stood there, on the front step, frozen. Not from the cold, not yet, but from the shock. The weight of what had just happened hit me like a ton of bricks. 3 hours later, the police called my father. His face went pale when they told him I'd been found unconscious in the storm. But by then it was too late. I was already gone. I'm Sherry Walls, and I'm 28 now. Sitting in my Boston apartment, looking out at the rain, I can't help but think about that night. The letter on the kitchen table from my father, asking to see me after 13 years of silence, brought everything rushing back. It's funny how rain always takes me back to that October 14th, 2011. I can still remember it like it was yesterday. I came home from school that day, thinking about the algebra test I had aced, about dinner, about the band poster I wanted to buy. A normal 15-year-old girl's thoughts. Nothing could have prepared me for what was about to happen. The moment I walked through that front door, I knew something was wrong. My father was standing there, his face a terrible shade of red, holding cash in one hand and empty pill bottles in the other. My sister, Karen, stood behind him, looking heartbroken, but her eyes told a different story. Satisfaction. I could see it in her eyes. Our stepmother, Jolene, stood in the kitchen doorway, saying nothing. That was her specialty, saying nothing while bad things happened. Then the accusations started. My father screamed that I'd been stealing from him, buying pills, hiding them in my room. Karen, the ever-so-perfect older sister, stood beside him, playing the part of the concerned sibling who just wanted to help me. I tried to explain, to tell him I hadn't done anything, but he wasn't listening. He had already made up his mind. Before I could say another word, he grabbed my arm, dragged me to the door, and threw me outside, along with my backpack. The rain was pouring down in sheets, the wind howling. He looked me in the eyes and repeated those words, "Get out of my house. I don't need a sick daughter." I was homeless. At 15, with no phone, no jacket, no way to call for help. I stood on that porch, waiting for someone, anyone, to open the door and tell me it was all a mistake. But nobody came. The door stayed locked. I had nowhere to go. No coat, no money, no phone. I was alone. And so I started walking. I didn't think about where to go. My body moved on autopilot towards the only safe place I knew, my grandmother Dorothy's house. It was 7 miles away. 7 miles that might as well have been 700, in the freezing rain with nothing but soaked sneakers and a thin hoodie. Every step felt like I was walking on glass. By the time I reached the 3rd mile, I couldn't feel my fingers anymore. My teeth were chattering, but I kept walking. What else could I do? My father had made up his mind. There was no turning back. I had no choice but to keep going. My body, however, didn't agree. By the time I reached the 4th mile, my legs gave out. I collapsed onto the gravel, exhausted, numb. And everything went dark. 3 hours after my father threw me into that storm, the police called him again. The officer on the other end was calm and professional, telling him that his daughter had been found unconscious on Route 9. Hypothermia. They were taking me to the hospital. And, by the way, Child Protective Services had been notified. When my father heard that, I imagine his heart must have stopped. But by then it was too late. He had already made his choice. Before we continue, please like this video and listen to my story till the end. Let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. And remember, you're not alone in this journey. Let's get back to it. But here's where the story takes a turn. Because the woman who found me wasn't just some random stranger. Her name was Gloria Hensley, a retired CPS worker with 35 years of experience. She had seen it all. She knew exactly what she was looking at when she found me lying in the rain, unconscious and alone. She wasn't about to let it slide. She wasn't about to let me be another forgotten victim. But I had no idea what was coming next. Not yet. But little did I know, my father's mistake was about to unravel everything, and the truth would come out in the most unexpected way. Stay tuned for the next part, where the real battle begins. I woke up in a hospital bed, my body wrapped in an emergency blanket, the sterile smell of the room mingling with the faint scent of coffee. The kind that makes you think of hospitals, where everything smells like disinfectant and good intentions. There was a woman sitting by my side. She had silver hair pulled back into a neat bun, her glasses perched on the end of her nose like someone's grandmother. But she didn't look like a grandma who baked cookies. She was sharp, observant. She wasn't going to let me slip through the cracks, not like everyone else had. Her name was Gloria Hensley. She was 67, and after 35 years with Child Protective Services, she knew exactly what she was looking at when she found a 15-year-old girl lying unconscious in the rain. Alone. With no coat, no phone, and no one even looking for her. I couldn't even remember how I'd gotten there. My mind was fuzzy. All I knew was that I was alive, and I wasn't alone anymore. She handed me a cup of coffee. Hospital cafeteria coffee that tasted like regret and desperation. "This is terrible," she said with a kind smile. "But it's warm." I remember laughing. Actually laughing, something I hadn't done in days, maybe weeks. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt like someone was truly listening. Gloria's eyes softened, but they never lost that edge, that sense of knowing. "Now, why don't you tell me why a 15-year-old girl was walking alone in a storm, with no coat and no phone?" For the first time, I told someone everything. The accusations. The lies. The years of manipulation by Karen. I told her things I hadn't told anyone. And she just listened. Never interrupted. Never doubted. When I finished, she didn't speak right away. But when she did, her words hit me like a lifeline. "I believe you. And I'm going to help you prove it." Those words, those 7 words changed everything. They gave me hope when I thought I had none left. But even then, I had no idea what Gloria was about to uncover. And the more she dug, the more the truth began to unravel. If you're still with me, hit the like button. And tell me in the comments if you've ever had to stand up for the truth when everyone else believed a lie. You're not alone. Let's dive deeper into this journey. The next few days were a blur of police calls, hospital visits, and the slow realization that my father had made a huge mistake. He thought he was getting rid of me, his troubled daughter. But instead, he had just set something in motion that would bring everything crashing down. You see, the hospital had contacted the police. They had to notify my father. They had to tell him that his daughter was in the hospital after being found unconscious in a storm. But the call didn't go as he'd expected. When Officer Daniels told him that Child Protective Services was involved, my father's face went pale. But it was too late. My father had made his decision, and now he was going to have to face the consequences. I don't know what I expected to happen when my father arrived at the hospital. Maybe I thought he'd realize what a huge mistake he'd made. Maybe I thought he'd apologize. But instead, when he walked into the room, he looked confused, annoyed, like this was all some inconvenience to him. And standing next to him, for the first time in my life, I saw Karen's perfect mask slip. I saw it in her eyes. Fear. Panic. For once, the golden child was terrified. The person who had controlled everything for years was suddenly powerless. The CPS worker, Maria Santos, was there too. She had been through it all. She had seen all the lies, all the manipulation, and she wasn't going to let this slide. What my father didn't know was that the truth had already started to surface. And soon, the perfect story Karen had built would crumble before her eyes. Stay tuned for part 3, where the Betrayal investigation begins and the lies unravel. The moment my father walked into that hospital room, it was clear he wasn't prepared for what was waiting for him. His face was a mixture of confusion and annoyance, like this whole situation was nothing more than an inconvenience to him. He probably expected me to be sitting there, crying, begging him to take me back. Instead, he found a room full of professionals, each one looking at him with a mix of disbelief and suspicion. Maria Santos, the CPS worker, didn't waste any time. She got straight to the point, asking him questions about why a 15-year-old girl had been thrown out into a storm without any investigation or attempt to verify the accusations. But my father didn't have answers. Not real ones. He mumbled something about how I had been acting out and how Karen had been so helpful, but his words were hollow. Karen stood next to him, playing the role of the concerned older sister, the one who had always been there, trying to save me from my own mistakes. But her performance faltered as the questions kept coming. Her eyes darted nervously between the CPS worker, the police officer, and me. For the first time, I saw her mask crack. It was like she could feel the walls closing in, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Just when it felt like my father might finally begin to see what Karen had done, someone else walked into the room. It was my grandmother, Dorothy. She was small but fierce, 5 feet 2 inches of pure determination. The woman who had never trusted my father. The woman who had always been there for me, even when no one else was. I'll never forget the look on my father's face when he saw her. He tried to explain, to justify what he had done, but Dorothy wasn't having it. She turned to him and said, "Raymond, I've known you for 15 years, and you've never been the sharpest tool in the shed, but this might be your dumbest moment yet." And she was right. My father had never once questioned Karen's story. He had never once asked me what happened. It was all just easier to believe the daughter who made him feel good about himself. Dorothy didn't let him off the hook. She demanded an emergency custody hearing right there, right then. It was nearly midnight, but she didn't care. She called in a family court judge who owed her a favor. Dorothy had connections, and she wasn't afraid to use them. By the time the hearing started, I had a new home. A safe one. My grandmother, Dorothy, was granted emergency temporary guardianship, and my father was ordered to have no contact with me until a full investigation was completed. Tell me in the comments if you've ever had someone in your life who stepped up when no one else would. Let me know if you've had someone like Dorothy who fought for you when others turned their backs. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button for more stories about reclaiming your life and standing up for what's right. I remember that night like it was yesterday. Dorothy took me to her old Buick, wrapped me in a blanket even though the heater was blasting, and drove me to her house. She didn't say much, but I could feel the warmth in her presence, the safety that had always been there. Grandma's house wasn't big or fancy, but it was warm. It was safe.
And it was mine now.
But the story didn't end there. It wasn't just about getting away from my father. It wasn't just about finding a place to stay. No, the investigation had only just begun. And the truth was about to come out in ways I could never have imagined. The investigation was just getting started, and what Gloria, Maria, and Dorothy uncovered would leave me breathless. The pieces of the puzzle were coming together, and Karen's perfect story was falling apart. Stay with me for part 4, where the truth finally comes to light. The days that followed were a whirlwind of phone calls, interviews, and a slow, steady unraveling of everything Karen had so carefully constructed. At first, I didn't realize just how deep the lies went. I didn't realize that the perfect plan Karen had put in motion was already falling apart. But little by little, the truth started to surface. It started with the money. The $800 that Karen had planted in my dresser, which my father believed was evidence of me stealing from him. But when Maria Santos, the CPS investigator, checked the bank records, she found something suspicious. That $800 had been withdrawn on October 14th, the same day my father had kicked me out into the storm. And the withdrawal wasn't made by me. No, the person on the security footage was Karen. Clear as day, it was her. Same jacket, same ponytail, same white sedan with a dent in the bumper from when she'd backed into a mailbox the summer before. The ATM footage was like a bombshell. Maria Santos even confirmed that at the exact time the withdrawal was made, I had been sitting in chemistry class, taking notes on molecular bonds. I couldn't have made that withdrawal. I was 12 miles away in class with 30 other students and a teacher who would remember me asking about covalent electrons. Karen thought she was being clever. She didn't think anyone would check. But she had underestimated one thing: people who know how to look. Maria wasn't just a caseworker. She was a detective in disguise. If you're still with me, don't forget to hit that like button. And share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever caught someone in a lie so big you couldn't believe it? Trust me, what happens next is even more shocking. Stick around. As the investigation deepened, we uncovered more. The pills. The pill bottles Karen had planted in my closet to make it seem like I was involved in drugs. It wasn't just any prescription either. They belonged to Trent, her boyfriend, who had his own set of problems. And the prescription was filled at a pharmacy on Oak Street. But when Maria called the pharmacy, she found something interesting. Trent had reported those pills stolen. Except he reported the theft on October 17th, 3 days after I was kicked out. The whole thing was a setup. Karen and Trent had orchestrated it all, and now the pieces were falling into place. They thought they had planned everything perfectly, but they hadn't counted on someone like Maria Santos, who would dig deeper than anyone else ever had. But the real breakthrough came with the burner phone. The one Karen had purchased 4 days before the storm. The one she used to send fake drug dealer texts. Maria tracked down the store where it was bought. And guess who was on camera, buying the phone in yoga pants and a ponytail?
Karen.
Same white sedan. Same dented bumper. Karen had thought she was untouchable. She thought that by framing me, she could have it all. The trust fund, the perfect life, and a scapegoat to blame for everything. But as each lie was exposed, she started to realize the walls were closing in. But what Karen didn't know was that the truth wasn't just coming from bank records and security footage. There was something even more damning that would turn her world upside down. Stay tuned for part 5, where the final pieces of the puzzle fall into place and justice is served. The more Maria dug into our family's financial records, the more Karen's lies started to unravel. It wasn't just the $800 from the ATM or the burner phone. It was the forgeries. For nearly 2 years, Karen had been stealing from my father. Small amounts at first, $50 here, $100 there. But over time, it added up to a staggering $18,000. She had been forging his checks, funneling the money to Trent's shady business ventures. The signatures on the checks were close, but not quite right. And Maria didn't miss a single detail. I had no idea how deep it went. I had no idea Karen had been robbing my father blind for so long. And I certainly didn't know that her plan was to get me out of the picture so that she could get her hands on my trust fund. That $45,000 my mother had set aside for me, the safety net she created for me and Karen before she died, it was the final prize. Karen figured that if she could get me institutionalized, I'd be out of the picture. She'd be able to take over my trust, to steal my future. And she knew my father would believe anything she said. He always had. But Karen made one crucial mistake. She underestimated how far my grandmother, Dorothy, would go to protect me. When Dorothy found out what had been happening, she didn't just sit back. She hired Leonard Vance, an old family friend who was a seasoned family lawyer. He was determined to make sure my trust was protected, and he was equally determined to make sure Karen paid for what she'd done. And then came the final piece of the puzzle. If you've been with me through all of this, I just want to say thank you. This journey has been a roller coaster, and I couldn't have done it without your support. If you're still here, give this video a thumbs up and share your thoughts below. What's the most shocking part of this story for you? It wasn't just the stolen money or the forged checks. It was Trent's arrest in Nevada that changed everything. The man who had been Karen's partner in crime, her loyal accomplice, was arrested for running the same scam in 3 different states. Over $400,000 had been stolen from unsuspecting victims. And just like that, Trent became a liability. The moment federal prosecutors offered him a deal for a reduced sentence, he sang like a bird. He confirmed everything. The plan to frame me, the stolen money, the burner phone. It was all Karen's idea. She had manipulated my father, played him like a puppet, all to get what she wanted. She had used me as her scapegoat, and Trent confirmed it all in his written statement. But Karen had one last chance to deny everything. When she took the stand in court, she tried to maintain her innocence, to paint herself as the concerned older sister who had just been trying to protect me. She even tried to explain away the $800 ATM withdrawal by saying it was for groceries. But the prosecutor wasn't buying it. With every question, Karen's story started to fall apart, piece by piece. The truth was undeniable now. The evidence was irrefutable. And Karen had nowhere left to run. In the end, it wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the whole web of lies that had been spun. Stay with me, because the final chapter is coming up next. The courtroom was silent as Karen's public defender tried to object. There was nothing left to object to. The evidence was crystal clear. The ATM footage, the school records, the pharmacy documents, they all pointed back to one thing: Karen's elaborate scheme to destroy me. When it was my father's turn to testify, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. He had to explain why he had believed his oldest daughter's lies without questioning them. He had to admit that he hadn't checked any of the evidence. He had trusted Karen because it was easier than facing the truth. His voice cracked as he tried to explain himself, but the damage was done. The judge didn't pull any punches. "Mr. Walls, trust is not an excuse for negligence," the judge said. "You expelled a minor child into dangerous weather conditions based on unverified accusations. You made no attempt to investigate. You chose one daughter over another without evidence, without reason, without basic parental judgment. That is not parenting. That is abandonment." The words hit my father like a ton of bricks. And they didn't stop there. The judge went on to say that Karen had engaged in a calculated, premeditated scheme to destroy her sister's life. Fraud, theft, filing false statements to law enforcement, and child endangerment. The sentence was harsh. Karen was given a 2-year suspended sentence, meaning she wouldn't go to prison unless she violated probation. She was ordered to pay restitution, $18,000, plus the $800 she had planted to frame me. She was also given 200 hours of community service and a permanent restraining order. Karen wasn't allowed to come anywhere near me again. But the real punishment came after that. Karen's name was permanently marked by a felony conviction. No more jobs in finance. No more positions of trust. No more working with vulnerable people. The golden child was now a convicted criminal, and the stain would follow her for the rest of her life. As for my father, he lost all guardianship rights. He was ordered to pay for my therapy and education until I turned 21. His reputation in the community crumbled. Friends stopped calling. Neighbors turned their backs. And Jolene, who had stood by him through everything, couldn't live with what he had done. She filed for divorce, and within weeks she was gone. But me? I was free. Free from the years of manipulation. Free from the lies. I had a new home, Grandma Dorothy's house. It wasn't big, but it was warm.
And it was safe.
I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. The final words from the judge rang in my ears. "You've shown remarkable resilience in the face of extraordinary cruelty." And as I walked out of that courtroom with my grandmother by my side, I knew it was the beginning of my real life. A life built on truth, on love, and on the people who truly cared for me. It's been years since that court hearing, but every year, as October rolls around, I'm reminded of the storm that changed everything. The storm that tried to break me, but instead led me to a life I never could have imagined. I found my voice. I found my family. And I found my strength. And now, looking out over the harbor from my Boston apartment, life is good. I'm engaged to Colin, a man who loves me for who I am, not for the lies others told about me. We're getting married in the spring, and yes, Grandma Dorothy's meatloaf will definitely be on the menu. The storm may have tried to destroy me, but in the end, it only redirected me. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Thanks for following this journey with me. If you've made it this far, I appreciate you. Please like and share this video. Let me know in the comments how you've overcome your own storms. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about standing your ground, reclaiming your life, and finding your truth. See you in the next story.